Hi there, and welcome to our weekly craft, a source for ideas, inspiration, and fun for crafters. I'm Sarah White, Chief Maker at ourdailycraft.com, and this week I would like to talk to you about reading. Now, I know reading is not a craft exactly, but I feel like I get a lot out of the reading that I do, and I've been talking in these videos about what I'm reading, and I just wanted to expand a little bit on like how I choose what I read, reading lists, things like that, because reading and knitting or crafting can go together, whether it's because you listen to audiobooks or because you're able to read and knit or crochet or sew or whatever at the same time. And I feel like there are a lot of crafters who are also into reading. So, and it can be a source of inspiration and just getting you to think about other cultures and things like that. You know, as I'm filming this, Russia has just invaded Ukraine today, and so I'm thinking about how reading can help us develop empathy. You know, it's touted for kids as being like you should read about people who are different from you because it does make you empathize with them and their situations more. But it's true for adults as well. So anyway, before we get too far into all that, Emma's wearing a test crochet project that I finished the other day and need to take some pictures of. This is the Fake Knit Till You Make It cowl by Paige Wall. It looks like knitting, but it's actually crocheted. It's really clever and cute. And I actually made mine a little too big, I think, but I haven't decided yet what to do with it, if I want to just keep it big or try to rip out some of it. You know, it's tall, but it's, you know, if you're cold, it has been sleeting off and on for 2 days here. So, you know, I might like having the tall that really covers my neck nicely. And it's just really cute. And once I got the hang of it, it was easy. This was my first test crochet project. And as I've mentioned on these before, I don't really consider myself that skilled at crochet. That's why my 100-day project is crochet. So it was fun to sort of test my skills to be able to make a project that was a technique I'd never tried before, and it was fun and I was able to do it. And so, you know, that's a little bit yay for me because I tried it and I figured it out. It was a bit of a learning curve, but I got there. And I'm wearing, you probably recognize if you're a knitter, this is the Weekender by Andrea Mowry. It's just like my go-to basic sweater. It's a little bit raggedy because I didn't weave in my ends best, but I don't even care because it's just kind of like a slouchy at home, again, the sweatshirt sweater kind of a situation. I also brought some knitting today since we're talking. This is another test knit that I'm doing. It's a skirt, the Flirt Skirt Light, that this one isn't released yet either. So once both of those patterns are live, I'll update the show notes with the links to those. But this one I like because it is good reading knitting because it's stockinette and you only have to increase. I'm doing increases every 9th round, so it's about every inch down the length of the skirt. So I don't have to pay attention to my knitting, and so I'm able to read while I knit, and that makes it makes the reading go a little faster because I'm also knitting, and it makes the knitting go a little faster because I have something else to focus on, which is kind of an interesting like combination, but that's the way when the knitting is mindless. It's good to have something else to focus on, but also, as I've mentioned, I'm mostly reading Les Miserables right now. I just passed page 1100, so I have 162 pages left. Not that I'm counting, but you know, I feel like not that I don't want to pay attention to it, but there are definitely portions of it that are not that interesting. And so having something else to focus even a little bit of my brain on is kind of nice while I'm working on that. And it has, studies have shown that for people who do handcrafts that knitting and crochet can improve your focus, and that's why it's good to allow people to do crafts in meetings and things, because you listen better. And I feel like sometimes I also read better, like that I'm paying more attention, even though it would seem not to be that way because you're occupied with something else. Doing the two things together is good for me, and I know that it's good for a lot of other people. Now, some people will tell me that they can't knit and read at the same time, not because of the focus problem, but just because it's physically hard to do. They need to look at their knitting, and I'm actually working on that with crochet, because I can't read and crochet at the same time, because I feel like I need to look at every stitch as I'm doing it. So I was practicing last night trying to feel the stitches with my finger a little bit better, because I'd like to be able to read and crochet as well. Since I'm doing the 100-day project, and I'm trying to work on a sweater, which I feel like I need to rip out most of, and I'm really sad about that because it's a raglan increase top down, and I didn't bring it or I'd show you, but I feel like I was not consistently doing the increases. So like at the beginning of the end and beginning of a round, it's worked back and forth, like you turn each time, but it's also in the round. So you have to join the round and then you turn and then you work back over the same stitches. And the way the pattern is written, I feel like I was increasing more at that beginning end of round point than at the other raglans. So there's like more holes in one spot, and it's a little longer in that one section. Also, the math just does not make sense on the pattern at all. So I think that I'm going to end up ripping back and trying to do a better job of like increasing consistently and just, going my own way with the pattern. Since I understand the concept of raglan increases, even though the numbers in the pattern don't actually make any sense, I know what they're doing and how to do that. So I should be able to do it, even though it's crochet and I've never crocheted a sweater before. I've knit plenty of raglan sweaters, so that's not an issue. But I digress, naturally. I would say for the reading while crafting, having a Kindle or an iPad or some kind of device that lays flat is really helpful, because it does lay flat. Sometimes with books, they won't stay open if you just lay it down on the couch or table or whatever. So I'll have to use something to weigh it down and hold the pages open. And that is a little trickier to maneuver, because you have to kind of like shift things around to be able to see all the words and things like that. So I do try to read mostly on my Kindle when I'm knitting. Though you can do it with an actual book too. And again, if you're into audiobooks, that's a great way to start or to continue, to just listen to audiobooks while you craft instead of reading a physical book, because it all counts, right? Some people try to give audiobooks a bad reputation because they say it's not really reading. I can't focus. Like, it's really hard for me to pay attention to an audiobook, which is weird, right? Even when knitting. But so I don't use them personally. But I know that there are people who like them, and it absolutely counts as reading. So that is another alternative if you're not able to physically read while you're knitting. But also it just takes practice. So, you may find that you can start trying to like look down, look at your page, read a couple sentences, check your knitting again, make sure you're doing okay, and your fingers will get where you need to be such that you can do it without looking. And I feel like that's, as I'm trying to learn how to do it with crochet, that's where I am right now, that I'm paying attention to where my fingers are and going, okay, I can feel that stitch. This is where my hook needs to go. this is what the yarn feels like going over without looking, and then I'll try to do a couple stitches and then look and make sure that I did them okay, and then I'll move on. And so it's the same with knitting. I've done knitting for so many years that I can do it without looking. I can do it in the dark. I can do it with my eyes closed. I don't feel any need, especially just with stockinette, I don't feel any need to look down. So it's a lot easier for me to do that while I'm reading. So back to Les Miserables and in general, choosing what to read. So when I turned 40 a couple of years ago, it's been 3 years now, I'm 43, but who's counting? When I was about to turn 40, I made a list of 40 books that I had always wanted to read. So these are books, maybe that everybody else read in school that I didn't, or books that are classics that I had never read before, or, books that are like mentioned as sort of touchstones in popular culture that I had never read. For instance, like Don Quixote. So, everybody knows the tilting at windmills expression, but I wanted to read the book and see what that actually was about. And it's literally like 3 pages of the book is about tilting at windmills. And it's really just a very long book about people making fun of someone who seriously needed mental health help that did not exist in his time period, probably. So, or Frankenstein or Dracula, those kinds of things. I read Brave New World because I never read it in school. Catch-22 is another one that's sort of a cultural thing that you hear about. But how many people have actually read Catch-22? Well, I have read it now. I think I have about 10 more books on that list. It's taken a long time because those are not the only things I'm reading, of course, but I hope to finish that list this year. And so I started the year with Les Miserables this year, and hopefully we'll finish in the next few days because as I mentioned last week, I'm ready to be done. I do think that it's worth taking the time to read hard books and long books and classics and things that you're interested in. I don't know that I would read it again. A lot of these books, I'm like, oh, I don't really understand why that's considered a classic, or I don't understand why so many people love that, or whatever. But, and I guess I can see the appeal of Les Miserables, but there's so many parts of it where I'm just like, why? The part I was reading this morning was all about the sewers in Paris, and like, okay, this really doesn't have anything to do with the story, but that's the way he writes. There's these asides and these historical references and things that don't really have anything to do with the story, but he thinks that you need that context, I guess, and I don't, I guess, is the problem. But, I still feel like it's worthwhile as an exercise to have read these books. I'm sort of obsessed with book lists. And so I like giving myself challenges and making lists for myself. So I have another list that I'm working on that is female writers. That one's even older and probably longer, and I've read fewer of them, I imagine. But, I went through and when I first started that one, I asked my friends on Facebook, like, who are your favorite women authors? What books by women do you really love? Those kind of things. And so I took that list and my own list and came up with a mastered list of female authors who I wanted to read. And so I throw those in. I think in the year 2000 probably. So it's been a while. I started reading all the books that won the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction, and I am caught up on those. So I've read all of those, and I started and from those I started from the first one up to the present, and then every year I read the new one. After I finished those, I started on National Book Award winners. I don't know why, but I started on those from the present, and so I'm back into sometime in the early 2000s, I think, on those. And I don't really know. I guess when I first started reading the Pulitzer winners, I kind of was dabbling in fiction writing, and I thought that I might learn something about American fiction or like what makes a novel popular or something. I didn't learn anything except that tastes change, and sometimes awards are given for political kind of reasons, and some of the books are just bad and some of them I just don't understand, and that's going to be true of anything that's popular, whether it's popular among critics, which is usually what you consider like award-winning books are critically acclaimed, whether it's popularly popular, popular among the masses, like bestsellers, books that are popular among your friends. Everybody has a different idea of what they like, and so those kind of lists are helpful in discovering a certain kind of book, but it's not necessarily going to be one that you actually like. But I enjoy those, and I'm sort of a completist in that kind of thing. So once I start a list, I probably will try and go back and finish the National Book Awards back to whenever they started. I don't even know how many of them there are, but so that's another list that I have. And so my reading habits are combinations of those three lists mostly, and then it's also like popular things. My coworkers have a reading related Slack channel, and so I'll get recommendations from them. If an author I like has a new book out, I will read those. So it's kind of haphazard still, even with the guidance of those lists, but I like having those to fall back on. So if I'm looking through the library's ebook app and not finding anything I like or that I knew that I want to read, I will can go back to those lists and look, and there's a lot of books that aren't available as ebooks, and so I need to actually go to the library and get some books because I'm a little like running out of things that are available as ebooks that I can check out from my local library, that are on that 40 books list, for instance. But yeah, so I really do encourage you, if reading is a thing that you're interested in, and I've always been interested in the idea of being well read and what that means to me and what that means to other people. But I think it's a really interesting exercise, even